my presentation today, based on that study course, is called Karma, the Universal Law of Cause and Effect. I'll just change my slides. So to begin with, I'd like to recap what we learned at the very first session, where Simon took us through the 3 fundamental propositions that was given in The Secret Doctrine by H.P. Blavatsky. For those of you who attended it, you will be familiar with it. The thing is, even to understand the law of karma, it is important to remember these 3 propositions. So the first proposition is that there is just one, the one and omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception and could only be dwarfed by any human expression or similitude. It is beyond the range and reach of thought. The second proposition is the law of periodicity, of flux and reflux, ebb and flow, which physical science has observed and recorded in all departments of nature. An alternation such as that of day and night, life and death, sleeping and waking, is a fact so common, so perfectly universal, and without exception. The fundamental identity of all souls with the universal oversoul, and the obligatory pilgrimage for every soul, that's the third proposition, a spark of the former through the cycle of incarnation in accordance with cyclic and karmic law. It admits no privileges or special gifts in man, save those won by his own ego through personal effort and merit throughout a long series of metempsychosis and reincarnations. Now, those of you attended last week on reincarnation might be familiar with this last proposition. This is what we'll be exploring today, because this points to the fact that there's no free lunches. You have to work for it yourself, and that also we are part of a much greater universal oversoul, and we are all sparks of it. And it would be good to keep these 3 propositions at the back of our minds. So the next thing to consider is that this law of karma is a universal law, and it's called the cause and effect. That's only one definition. There's another way of looking at it. It's the law of equilibrium. So whenever there is a disturbance of the equilibrium, there is movement to restore it. So that's another way of looking at it. So every action disturbs this equilibrium, and there is another response to it to make it equal again, because the one is just the one, and it's complete equilibrium. So once the one becomes the many, there is a loss of equilibrium, and then the law kicks in. Now, I'd like to do a disclaimer here. The only people who can understand the law of karma are the ones who have actually risen above it. Those of us who are still in the grips of it, let's say, we cannot understand it completely. However, if we can observe this law, we can use it to live a certain kind of life, in a more conscious life. And that's the purpose of studying the law of karma. So on this slide, it talks about it being a universal law. It relates 2 linked events that differ in time. So what that means is, if I have set a cause in motion just now, it will take time for the effect to show. Even if it's just a moment, it's still, there is a time factor involved. The third point is the cause and effect may be more or less separated in time. That's what it is. That's what I said. They are all 2 aspects of the same reality. So the cause determines the effect. Now the effect becomes a cause again. So it's a continual process. So that's the law itself. And then there's the principle of causality. Now that is more scientific way of looking at things. It is the support of science. In the principle of causality, the same causes produce the same effects. So it's again principle of uniformity. Now this is more apparent on the physical plane. For example, the combination of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom always produces 1 molecule of water. So most of our life is dependent on us trusting to this law of principle of causality in daily life. There was a time when I used to think, if the water that we boil to cook rice decides that I'm not in a mood to boil today, we won't have any food. So laws have to work, and we are sure that it's going to work. Otherwise, our daily life would be quite difficult to live if there were no such universal laws. The next thing is about chain of causes and effects. Like I mentioned, an effect becomes a cause on its own. So the reaction to an effect becomes the cause of another event. Then it goes on and on. So in this example, the author of the study course brings to our attention that, let's say someone points to a fault in you. So they identify a fault and we feel it as an aggression. We attack the alleged aggressor, then we reaffirm our rights, and then we expose what suits us. Now, so these are a series of automatic reactions that make our behavior very predictable. Now, if our character is something like this, that if someone says something to us, our immediate reaction is to say something back and attack the person who has said something to us, then we know that the next one will be, okay, we're going to justify ourselves and then try and say only the things that are relevant or only what we think suits us. However, this cycle can be broken with conscious responses. So when I was working in Adyar, I had an opportunity to go to the headquarters of the Krishnamurti Foundation. They used to show us videos of J. Krishnamurti. And there was this one talk that I listened to, and he said, if someone tells you you're an idiot, just pause and think, maybe he's right. I was in my early 20s. I thought, oh my God. I didn't go back for a whole year because I thought, how is it possible to actually pause and think, oh, maybe that person's right, but I put it into practice. And if someone said something about me, I thought, oh, maybe he or she is right. And it took me a year of self-reflection to actually put it into practice. So yeah, it's so that's one way to change this loop of automatic reactions. So again, karma, the word itself is a Sanskrit word. Now it's found its way into the English dictionary. It is definitely the contribution of the Theosophical Society, who introduced karma back into the Western civilization in the 19th century. Karma and reincarnation was reintroduced because it was definitely there in the ancient wisdom traditions in those regions, but they had kind of lost footing over there. So this word karma means action. It refers to both the process of the action and its outcome. The actions influence the environment, but also react on ourselves, action and reaction. The outcome of what we do sooner or later comes back to us. So as St. Paul said, you reap what you sow. Now it's interesting, this word karma is not just action that you're performing now. It also talks about the outcome of it, if you're facing the effect of your actions as well. So that's interesting. With Sanskrit, that's what it is. You have to look at the context of where it is being mentioned and how it's being addressed. So that's what is karma. So the action influences the environment. Now, it's interesting that a certain number of actions, you will find yourself in an environment that will help you do more of it, let's say. So I know there's this whole movement towards the law of attraction. So I guess that's what it comes to. And then the outcome of what we do sooner or later comes back to us. Now, there is an interesting imagery you can think of. It's like a boomerang that we know from Australia. If you throw it, it comes back to you sooner or later. I've never used one. I don't know how to throw one. However, I've learned that that's what a boomerang is. However, nothing is fatalistic. We'll come to that later. So the next one, if karma is reasonable to understand, then if the causes you set in motion do not happen in the same incarnation, then the possibility of reincarnation comes in. I'm not sure how many of you in this gathering believe in reincarnation. Many of you attended last week's session on reincarnation. So if karma has to work, then reincarnation could be true as well. So whatever you set in motion this life, and you will get it back coming to you in the next life, maybe, if not this one. And you might be going through what you have set in motion in some other lifetime. So this is another interesting thing. It's not easy to actually find out which of it is past due to past karma and what is it happening due to present karma and the results of it. So let's go into what's on the slide. It says the results can be harvested in future incarnations. Many times we see the effects, but we do not see the causes. Why does all this happen to me? What have I done to deserve this pain? Now that's a normal reaction if you're having a challenging time. We always ask, why me? However, it's not easy to tell which of it was because of what you did in a past life, in another personality, or if it's just happening now. So that's up to all of us to observe and find out. Well, one thing you could do is your character is definitely something you have built in the past. Like I used to be an early childhood relief teacher, and I used to see little ones and their characters. You can tell right from the start what kind of response this child might do, and that's because of character. Now you're a newly born baby. How can all these newly born babies be so different? Unless there is something that is a possibility of reincarnation, and that they bring back some certain tendencies when they are born. So that's the word called Skandhas, and I think we'll deal with it in the future slide. So how do we receive the reaction? Now this is what we come to, how the law could work and does work. And when I say could work, is we could observe it. If we harm another being, we damage ourselves in part. Now this points us to the third fundamental proposition, where we are part of this universal oversoul. So that means whatever we do to others, what we perceive as others, we are doing it to ourselves, because we're all part of this. Now here he is talking about damage. The same thing applies to inner change. If we make the effort to change ourselves, certain parts of ourselves we've noticed that requires changing, then we have uplifted everyone as well. So that's how the law works. The good that we do to another, we also do to all others and to ourselves, because we are not separate from this point of view. However, we are all separate on one level. We have different bodies, different ways of thinking, different ways of responding to our karma. However, everything affects everyone else. So we do not know how far the effects of our actions can have. What is the effect of a smile? Now, this is so interesting. What is the effect of a smile? I'm just remembering a story someone mentioned. It's a true story. It happened in San Francisco. There was this person who walked from his home to the bridge, and I'm not sure how. Maybe he left a letter or something. He said, if even one person smiles at me, I will not jump off this bridge. So I hope that someone smiled. I'm not sure how this story came, but I think that person did jump off the bridge because no one smiled at him. So yes, we actually have no idea what our actions have an effect on other people. So in coming back to this theory of chaos, complex interconnected systems, small alteration can produce large changes in the result. Now, this is so interesting. I'm not sure how to give examples of this, but I'd encourage you to look at this theory of chaos. Because we are also interconnected, even the smallest action can have large consequences. Now, many of us think if the world has to change, everybody has to change. Maybe that's not needed, because I think someone asked Krishnamurti once, how would the state of humanity change? He said we need only 80 people to become enlightened. Even at that time, probably there were only 5 billion or 4 billion on the planet. Now we are 7, I think. So yeah, the scale is different at different levels of consciousness. So we can't we can't measure things in the way that we always do on the physical, emotional, and mental plane. So this theory of chaos is encouraging, the same way as if you know how to understand the law of karma, you can actually set in motion causes that have large consequences for the betterment of humanity. So again, the butterfly effect is something like that. A butterfly beats its wings somewhere in the world and it rains in the antipodes. So that's again interesting. I mean, imagine some butterfly in India is flapping its wings and we are having this weather here. It could be possible, who knows, because we're all connected. So that's again something you could explore further. Here we come to the word called Skandhas. The Buddhists use this term called Skandhas. It's Sanskrit and it's used in Pali as well. So it's an aggregate or stack or a trunk. That's the literal meanings of the word Skandha. So these are tendencies acquired in previous incarnations that characterize and condition us. Now, this is what I mentioned when I talked about little children. They have certain tendencies. Some children, if they are challenged, they cry. Some others will go and bite the other one. Another child will just hit back at you. So these are all certain tendencies and responses or reactions that are visible at a young age. So they are transferred to the new embodied personality. Now, this is coming back to reincarnation. When a soul reincarnates and comes back down towards the earth, let's say, they pick up these tendencies that they left behind to go on to higher planes. It all comes back. So they make us receive the effects of the causes generated in previous lives and in the present. So this is what happens. The tendencies that we sort of left behind on the astral and the mental, as we are being born again and reincarnating into the flesh, we pick up where we left off and these tendencies. So it is possible to change in this lifetime if we could recognize our tendencies. So H.P. Blavatsky in The Key to Theosophy says, I quote, "Karma with its army of skandhas waits at the threshold of Devachan, whence the ego re-emerges to assume a new incarnation." Now there are 5 skandhas according to Buddhism. There's the form that is dependent on the senses and rupa. There is sensation, it's called Vedana. Consciousness, it's based on decisions, and it's called Vijnana. Perceptions, it's called Samnya, I think. And then mental structures is Vasana. So it's interesting that these Kandas are not limited to the physical, but also they are tendencies you have developed emotionally, mental conditions and mental structures that are inbuilt in you. Like, let's say some people who have got addicted to smoking or drinking, it will become very difficult to overcome it maybe in a next lifetime, because the tendency is to drink and smoke. Maybe it's easier to pick it up, let's say there's less resistance in the next life. And perceptions, oh my god, that's amazing. H.P. Blavatsky said perception is action. She's actually saying perception is karma. So the what you perceive, you've already created karma by just perceiving things in a certain way. So that's another tendency we would have inbuilt in us over lifetimes. So again, I think this whole topic is so complex. We would actually need far more time than an hour to explore this Kandas and things. But all I can give a tip to you is try and find out what are your tendencies that you have noticed in the last few years. How many of them have changed because of life? How many have you tried to change consciously? That would be a good self-reflection. Now, after all this, karmic, the law of karma and reincarnation, if we can sort of think, okay, it's possible, then the people we meet are also tied to us in certain ways. There are karmic ties to people we meet and live our lives with. It could be our family, our communities, the country you're born in, the type of physical body you have. Everything is based on this, all the other things I mentioned before. Those things determine where you are going to be at a certain given time. So the ties that we have created with other beings endure. So it's like there's no escape from people you're annoyed with, or if you love, the attachment you have towards them. All those things endure. In the new incarnation, the being is reunited with loved ones and also with enemies of the past. He can be born in families where he has strong ties. Now, it's not always necessary that you have ties with everyone in your family. It could be your mother or father or brother or sister, or two of them or three of them. So you could be born with those you have strong ties with, but not all of them. So this explains the irresistible attraction of two people who meet again, lifelong friendships, twin souls, and falling in love, etc. So I would say that this whole thing about first sight and all that, it's probably two souls recognizing each other. Because, sometimes you meet someone for the first time and you think, oh God, I've known you all your life. Not you, or this life, several lives. It happened to me when I was working in Adyar for the second time. There was this, my friend Juliana, who came from Argentina. So she wouldn't be looking at me. We'd both be staring at the screen, and she would start off in Spanish as if she knows me for a long time. I didn't know a word of Spanish, but that soul-to-soul connection is there. And when you're not aware of the physical, you think, okay, this person is going to understand what I'm saying. So then I had to say, Juliana, please explain in English. So that's another, recognition of a friend that you might, recognize, or maybe they've been your parent and this time they are your children. Especially because last time they took care of you, this time you have to do the same for them. I do suggest the whole Edgar Cayce books if you want to learn more about reincarnation and karma and how it works out in people's lives. That's another interesting study. And there's also Michael Newton's books, which you can find in our library. So again, both attraction and repulsion creates bondage, which was on the previous slide. Now coming to sowing and reaping, this is what St. Paul said, as you sow, so you reap. However, what is the determining factor? How intense is your karmic effect? So that depends on motive. Now let's say an ignorant person commits the same action, and compared to a person who knows what they're doing, the effect of karma is completely different from knowingly doing something and unknowingly doing something. So let's have a look at how do we sow. Each level of action will produce effects in its own scope. I'll try and increase this view just slightly so you can probably see it better. This, yeah, can you all see this?
Yep.
So each level, so the physical execution provides the physical environment. Now, for example, let's say I spend my graduation like I did doing history of art. I would have, if I had pursued in that line, I would have probably been working in a museum or somewhere, or an art gallery. And like Ganesh ji studied engineering, so I'm sure he found himself in all those places where he could use his knowledge of engineering and mathematics and things like that. So physical action provides the physical environment. Emotional desire attracts opportunities. Now this is where the law of attraction comes into play. If you have a very strong desire for something, your life will throw before you opportunities. Like in the Theosophical Society, we talk about altruism and preparing yourself for service. So if you are always conscious that I would like to be of service, then the more you serve, the more work you get. It's like someone said to me, the sign of work well done is more work. Well, I thought we could have a holiday after a well done job, but that's not how it works. So if you have an emotional desire to achieving something, opportunities will come your way. And another tip for all of you, if you would like the whole universe to help you with your vision and a goal, then write it down between Christmas and Easter. So that's when you make your New Year resolutions, sort of, that people say you need to do. However, if you do it within that period, the whole universe will help you achieve it. That's what I read, one of the quotes of Blavatsky. Because the Earth's magnetism is in such a way that it allows you to do that. And then in the realm of thought constructs our character. Now, if you look at your own thoughts in one day, if you just think back in the last, 8 or 9 hours, where were your thoughts? Were you thinking of your work? Were you thinking of somebody lovingly, or the opposite? Were you annoyed most of the day, or were you happy most of the day? I had a great day. I've been going like a well-oiled engine all day today. I had a very inspiring meeting in the morning, so that really energized me. So, and I got a certificate of accomplishment as well for some test I did. So I was really happy. So the whole thought I had today were all inspiring and motivated. So that gets built up into my character. Or if you have been feeling sad because something happened today, or you heard that someone else is suffering, then in your heart, you're building the character of compassion. So that's how it works, the law of karma. Whatever you pay attention to, you become. So coming to again, so now you have sowed so many seeds on the physical, emotional, and mental. Now we come to action. Now, when you've done these 3 things, it will result in action because that's momentum. So act, intention and motivation are like dimensions of the action that determine the effect. Now, again, we come back to the motive. Now, aspirations and desires become aptitudes. This is how the law works. Annie Besant in her book called Karma says, aspirations and desires become aptitudes. Repeated thoughts become trends. The will to act becomes actions. Experiences become knowledge. Sufferings become consciousness. Now that's another thing that we could all explore and find out what it means. I'll just increase the view so you can see the slides more clearly. So this is how you sow and live your life. If you are able to be conscious, you can say the repeated thoughts I'm going to have will be on a spiritual nature. Those of us who have come to the Theosophical Society, we could say, I will have more theosophical thoughts if I can in a week. I mean, that's what the purpose of our regular lodge meetings are, which is to actually remind us that we need to be, if we can, using these thoughts that we pick up on a Tuesday evening to take it into our lives and have it at the back of our minds, because that is what will create the trends. And it will determine the kind of actions that we, do. And then experiences become knowledge. Now, when you experiment with your actions and thoughts and aspirations, and that will become your knowledge, you'll find out, okay, this works and this doesn't work. And that's where the suffering becomes consciousness. So it's good to suffer, I guess. My mother used to say, you have no pity for anyone suffering. I still don't. Because I know it's great. It's becoming their consciousness. So how do we harvest? So how would you harvest your karma? First category is as pending effects. And the second is according to the scope of the causative. Now, these are all mentioned in all these complex terms. I'll just make it very simple. There are three types of karma in storage. One is accumulated karma that you have in storage, and some of it becomes matured, and that's why it is taking effect in your life now. And then some of it is left there for the future, depending on the energy that has been generated for it. Maybe it's not the time for it to take seed and flower. So there are three types. So that's three types of karma. Now you have a big suitcase of it. So some of it is getting ripe, it will come out. And then some of it is still sitting there for a future time. That's how it works. And then according to the scope of the causative, individuals' acts and decisions. Now, a person's individual act and decisions determine their own, what they have to face in the whatever coming days. That's your harvest. The collective is maybe group actions that you have taken. Like if you probably in the world war and all the countries and things that, made decisions based on what the general public did, or did someone stand against it because of your own belief? So it's a collective karma as well, has an effect. So if you are facing the consequences, it could be individual or it could be collective as well. So the next bit is about, if there is such a law, then we should be able to work with it. And it also means that nothing's happening just by chance. Actually, there probably is nothing called coincidence, though it looks like coincidence. It's just all the laws coming together. So karma means responsibility. Now it's interesting. if we don't take responsibility, that's a free will choice. However, karma will teach you, the law of karma will teach you to take responsibility. And I don't mean that someone's sitting there teaching anybody. It's just that we will ourselves find out, okay, this works in this way. And if I don't like what's happening, then I better change what I'm doing. Now, in the business world, they say, if you want to different results, you won't get it doing the same things you were doing. So it's the same thing. So I'll read out what's on the slide for those who are watching on the phone. Responsibility means the ability to make decisions and face the consequences. Second, karma is a law of growth and responsibility, not of reward and punishment. Now let's go each point. When I was growing up in India, we have these two words called papa and punya. Papa means things are consequences of wrong actions. And punya is the consequences of good actions that was beneficial to not just the person, but to other people as well. So it's like gaining merit. That's what the Buddhists would say. So there's no one sitting there meting out punishment and giving us rewards. This again brings us to the third proposition. Everything is you only get what you deserve. There's no extra and free lunches. There's no rewards for being a good girl. You were a good girl, that's great. That's fine. You'll have a few happy days, that's all. So what about all the times you were a bad girl? So you'll have to face the consequences of that too. So there's no one saying, oh, you were 25% good and 75% bad. And actually, you will get the reward of both ways. So it's very interesting. The law of karma is quite interesting. So how does it work? Let's say you are being a good girl and you're obeying all the instructions given by someone who is more mature and more wiser than you. Now you're just performing the action because you're obeying out of respect. From that point of view, obeying only generates the karma of the action, but does not exercise responsibility. So the consequences will be of the actions you are doing, but not the motive behind it. That responsibility lies on the person giving you the instructions. That's why they say when you find a teacher, or if the guru finds you, they have to think really carefully before taking on the responsibility of coaching you or giving you instructions on the spiritual path, because they are very careful in not giving you instructions that you obey automatically or blindly, if the great gurus are like that. So the fourth point is, ignoring the effects of our actions on others is a cause of misery. Now, often we act without considering what are the consequences on other people. Sometimes we may not even be able to see it. So if we do act out of ignorance and not know, okay, how is it going to impact on the other people, then you will know by things that will happen to you again that will cause you misery in the end. And that's how you have to learn that these causes have effects. And our destiny is to be responsible and decide wisely. So ultimately, the whole purpose of the human incarnation is to learn responsibility for every action on thought, word, and deed. So now I come to something that's a bit modern way of looking at how we could reflect on ourselves and at what level we are operating. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of this ORBED. This is called OAR and BED. It's easy to remember if you remember ORBED. This I learned a year ago when I had a meeting with one of my accountant business colleagues. she told me about this, and it's really impacted my life quite greatly. So it's called above the line thinking and below the line thinking. Now, all of us move up and down here. So it's a great scale to measure yourself and find out, am I taking ownership? Am I being accountable? Am I being responsible at any given moment or any situation? Now, if we don't like what's happening, we might find others to blame, or we might blame the weather, we might blame something else. We'll find excuses for not doing something we are supposed to be doing, or we'll find a way to deny that it's even happening. Let someone else deal with it. So that's below the line thinking and behavior. And above the line. So if you take this in the point of view of karma, now what do you think would be the consequences of above the line thinking? That's where you're actually taking charge of your life and living life according to the law of karma. You're taking ownership. Okay, I wasn't feeling good today for probably 4 hours. Now let me back up and take ownership of this. I'm accountable for the way I feel, and I'm responsible for the way I feel. I give myself permission maybe to wallow in self-pity for maybe 10 minutes. However, time to take responsibility and take action. So that's above the line thinking. Even if you jump down a bit for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, climb back up the ladder. That's how I visualize it. Or let's say something didn't happen the way you wanted it to happen, then you may blame the situation, blame things. And if you find yourself blaming someone else for what's happening, then here's the time again to jump up to the above the line. Or if you find yourself making excuses, that's another time you think, oh my God, I'm thinking below the line now, I better start flying up. So I learned this term called high flying disc from the Abraham Hicks thing. I'm not sure how many of you know that. It's some kind of channeling person. So yeah, so always make sure you're on the high flying disc. So now we have another 10 minutes to go and a couple more slides. So the myths about karma. Now, many of you have heard, I've also mentioned there is good karma and bad karma. Karma is a law of punishment and reward. These are all myths. Karma is dispensed. They send it to us. We don't know who is sending it to us. We have to be careful not to interfere in another's karma. And the last point is everything that happens to us is a consequence of our past actions. Now, we dealt with the first three. There's no such thing actually as good karma and bad karma in the sense of a judgmental point of view. However, there are consequences and there is momentum. Whatever you have given momentum to will come to pass. That's how it works. So it's not a law of punishment and reward, and it's certainly not dispensed. There's nobody sitting and dispensing it. Though in theosophical literature, we do know of very, very high spiritual intelligences called a law of lords of karma. I will just mention it so that those of you who want to explore it more can go into it. But even like I said right at the beginning, these things cannot be understood by us who are still in the realm of the law. We have to be able to rise above it, and it is possible. There are such beings who have risen above it, and they know how to work with it. It's just like when you learn how to cook, you know how to cook different materials. It's the same way. So you know how to work with the law of it. So until we reach that, we just have to be open-minded and just think, okay, I will try and understand this when I can. So this one is interesting. When you talk about service, it says, oh, we have to be careful not to interfere in another's karma. Now, I don't think anyone can actually do that. However, there are certain ways that you can ask yourself, how much can I help, and do I just hold the space and allow that person to learn what they're learning, but be there to be of help when they need it. So that's a tough one, but no one actually can interfere with anybody else's karma. If they are in your vicinity, they are part of your karma and you're part of them. It's that particular situation that has been presented to you by destiny. So that's it. So or by the all the other laws working at that moment. So it's a momentary moment to moment decision you have to make, when to help and when not to help. And then the last one is a fatalistic attitude that says everything that happens to us is a consequence of our past actions. Even though in the law point of view it's true, however, there are fresh things happening all the time. This is a dynamic world we live in. So not everything is due to past actions. It could be the thing happening out of other people's past actions around you. So, and it might be new for you. So that's where free will and the predetermination and building our destiny comes in. So if we have ownership, accountability, and responsibility, we can build our own destiny. Now, the free will here is the choices you make moment to moment. You do have free will, either to work with the law or against the law. That's the only free will you have. So the first point is, the most important teaching of the law of karma is that each one is the architect of his own destiny. The limitations exist, but the reaction depends on us, and with it, we build our future. Sometimes we have to accept the inevitable, because the causes that have been set in motion, they cannot be stopped. Some things you cannot stop. However, you can sort of change its direction. Annie Besant talks about how, you do if you're on a sailboat and the wind is blowing in a certain direction, if you move the sails in a certain way, you can still go in the direction you plan to go. So that's how you can deal with karma. There's an amazing chapter in the Light on the Path at the end on karma. So I point to it to those who want to explore further. So we can correct the mistakes made. Now that's encouraging. You're not stuck with what you did in the past. You can change it. You can correct some of the mistakes. You can lessen the impact of some of them. And then live in the present, because it is here and now where we are sowing. So that's another thing about karma. So whatever you are doing today determines your future. So that's how we build our destiny.